Hi, welcome to session 5. This is the abstract screening workshop. So in terms of where this sits in the whole course program, we're at the moment in week 5, so we're focusing on retrieving, managing and screening papers to fulfill the PRISMA reporting guidelines. So in terms of the learning objectives for you, this week is all about learning the skills to retrieve, manage and screen references and full text in a database. So in terms of what you need to have done to keep up this week, you should have already built a search strategy out of search elements from other reviews. So we've broken up other searches by population intervention comparator, outcome and study design, and we found reviews that match our elements on those features. And we're just borrowing those sections of their searches to build our search. We've run those searches on Central and PubMed, and we've exported those to Endnote Web. We've recorded our searches following the PRISMA S guidelines, and we've had our searches checked by others using the PRESS checklist. And we've had that feedback, and we've iterated and rechecked our searches if necessary. And we've talked our supervisors through the PRESS checklist. And then we've subsequently run those searches on PsycInfo and in Embase and in Web of Science. And then we've exported those search results out of those databases and into Endnote and recorded our total. And we've documented our searches according to the PRISMA 2020 guidelines. This week, we're moving on to screening. And one of the things we need to specify if we're going to go ahead and undertake our screening is the eligibility criteria for studies to be included in our review. And the essential elements of eligibility criteria are that we specify all study characteristics used to decide whether a study was eligible for inclusion in our review. The components are described in the PCOS framework, and any other characteristics such as study designs or settings or minimum durations of follow-up or any other methodological features that are required for studies to be included are clearly specified. If we've used any other criteria such as year of publication, language, or that it was published in a peer-reviewed journal, whether conference abstracts are eligible, we need to indicate that clearly. If studies are ineligible because outcomes that we're interested in weren't measured or not reported, we need to make that clear. We should be clear why they're not included, and if it's because it wasn't recorded or it wasn't published, we need to be clear which one it is, because we mustn't be ambiguous about why we didn't include studies. Otherwise, we undermine confidence in our unbiased inclusion of studies. We should consider providing any rationales for any notable restrictions to study eligibility. If a review is restricted to studies that are published from 2000 onwards because that was the first year a treatment was available, we should be clear about that. When we're undertaking screening, we need to be clear how that's undertaken. So we need to report how many reviewers screened each record and each full text manuscript retrieved, and whether multiple reviewers worked independently, i.e. they were unaware of each other's decisions at each stage of screening, or if they worked together, or if records were screened by one reviewer and exclusions checked by another. And we also need to be clear on what processes were used to resolve disagreements between screeners, such as referring those disagreements to a third reviewer, or whether they got together and resolved their disagreement by consensus. We also need to report any processes that were used to obtain or confirm relevant information from study investigators. Here's an example from the PRISMA explanation and elaboration document, a clear description of a screening process. 3 researchers, AP, HB-R, FG, independently reviewed titles and abstracts of the first 100 records and discussed inconsistencies until consensus was obtained. Then, in pairs, the researchers independently screened titles and abstracts of all articles retrieved. In the case of disagreement, consensus on which articles to screen full text was reached by discussion. If necessary, the third researcher was consulted to make the final decision. Next, 2 researchers, AP, HB-R, independently screened full text for inclusion. Again, in case of disagreement, consensus was reached on inclusion or exclusion by discussion, and, if necessary, the third researcher FG was consulted. What will we do? We're going to use a standardized title and abstract form in the name of some software called Screenatron that's part of a set of tools called the SR Accelerator. We're going to use 2 reviewers per paper, so it's going to be dual screening of all papers. When we've undertaken that screening, we'll discuss those abstracts where there was disagreement and resolve conflict using a tool called Disputatron. However, if we're an odd-numbered team, to share the workload, one person who didn't do any screening will do the resolution. So what do we have to do this week? We have to deduplicate our records that we've retrieved. We have to describe our eligibility criteria as per the PRISMA guidelines. We need to use that eligibility criteria to complete abstract screening. We need to record our decisions and report agreement. We need to complete lines 1 and 2 of the PRISMA flow diagram. This is part of the PRISMA 2020 flow diagram. It's not quite the one we'll end up with. There's some extra stuff on the side of the one we'll use next week. Pretty perfect for our purposes this week, with the exception that it mentions registers, which we can't use because we're not part of a Cochrane review group. It also mentions automation, which I don't think we'll use unless some of you are finding yourselves with huge numbers of abstract. As such, we're going to ignore the bits on automation and registers and just complete the first 2 rows. So we'll complete the total number of records identified from databases, the total number of records removed before screening, so the number of duplicate records. We'll record the total of number of records screened and the total of number of records excluded. And that will actually give us the total number sought for retrieval, but we'll do that next week. Sadly, this week marks a year since MF Doom's untimely passing. So it's a good time, given how potentially draining and monotonous screening can be, to follow his advice and keep an eye out. So this week I'm going to introduce SR Accelerator, which was developed by a team led by Paul Glaziou, who you'll remember from the evidence-based medicine video in week 1. He's led a team at Bond University in Australia to build the SR Accelerator, which has been developed to support a 2-week systematic review approach. It's got a number of functions, 3 of which we'll look at today. Now, you remember that due to overlap, we're likely to find a lot of the same references in Central, Medline and Embase at a minimum. In previous years, we would have got rid of these duplicate records by doing deduplication in Endnote, which is okay, but a bit faffy and requires messing about with settings deep in the preferences to achieve what Deduplicator, or what I inevitably call Dedupatron, does automatically. Unfortunately, different databases end up with subtly different details in their records, and Endnote can't cope with that. Dedupatron is the tool we'll use to clear out these duplicate records. Now, when it comes to looking through the records we've retrieved and screening out the ones that don't meet our criteria, we'll usually create a screening spreadsheet in Excel and do all our screening in there. Or we'll screen inside Endnote and record things in Excel, but either way, it feels like a kludge. Screenatron lets you do it in a readable format with rapid workflows for including, excluding, and more. Now, what do you do if when you're screening with your partner, you disagree? You discuss it, and we used to record these discussions in Excel, but the team in Bond have created Disputatron, which lets you look over abstracts together and decide what to include or exclude based on discussion around the abstract. You might find yourself dropping in and out of Endnote Desktop, so it's a good idea whilst you're using SR Accelerator to have Endnote Desktop up and running. Okay, in Endnote Desktop, export your library in an XML format. Then go to sraccelerator.com and choose library, and then it'll open up a browser window. And then you need to import your XML file that you've exported from Endnote Desktop. Then, up in the top left, name and save your library in SR Accelerator. That'll save a DDPE file that you can come back to if you decide to take a break. It will then automatically classify your library into extremely likely duplicates, which you'll just need to have a really quick check over and check that all the records in each of the blocks are the same. Then you'll see it's classified them into highly likely, and then again you'll need a quick check through and just check that all the references in each of the blocks are the same. Then it classifies into likely to contain duplicates, and you should have a thorough check through that. In particular, what you want to do is make sure that the record that it chooses to keep is the one that's the most complete. And lastly, you have non-duplicates, and you don't need to check those. And when you've gone through all those categories, you can hit export all refs deduplicated, and you want to save that file. So I'm just going to show you that now. Okay, so you can see that I'm here in my Endnote library, in Endnote desktop, and I'm just going to export an XML file. So if I go into File, Export, Save as File Type, .xml, and I'm just saving that in my Downloads folder. Okay, so that's the XML file saved from Endnote desktop. Now I'm at Systematic Review Accelerator. So you can see Systematic Review Accelerator, and I've already clicked the Deduplicator button here. So I'm at SR Accelerator, Deduplicator. Now I need to choose library, and you can see there's the XML file I saved, and hit open. Now I click upload. Okay. Now you can see I've got my deduplicator untitled up here. So I'm going to give it a name. And hit save. And then I'll go up here, File, Save. And you can see it's saving a .ddpe file. So if this was a lot of work, I could come back to it later. Okay, so first of all, I need to have a super quick check. And you can see the first one here is the same as the next two. Don't need to do any more than that. First is the same as the next two. First is the same as the next two, and so on. So just need to work my way through these. Just checking that all the columns are the same. And then on to the next one. And so on. Okay, let's assume you've carefully gone through all of those. Next, I'm on to highly likely duplicates. So I'm slightly more careful here, just taking my time to make sure that the title and the authors look similar. Not seeing any problems there. And so on. And when I've gone through all those carefully, then I'll go on to likely duplicates. And here's where I need to have a thorough check. And so straight away on the first one, you can see I've got a less complete record at the top. So instead, I'm going to choose the one below. Otherwise, these looked all the same. And then here, the most complete record looks like this one. Happy with that first one there. Happy with the first one there. Happy with the first one there. Happy with the first one there, and so on. So it's just a case of keep going through and checking the title, authors, and journal, and making sure you've got the most complete record. That one's complete there. I'm just carefully go through all of these until I'm done. Now, let's assume that I am done. Okay. I'm going to go on to non-duplicates and go down to the bottom there. Okay. And I'm going to assume I'm done now. I am going to hit export and choose all references deduplicated. Okay. And then I'm going to switch back to Endnote. Okay, I'm now in Endnote. and I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to choose a new library. File, New, and I'm going to give it a name. Deduplicate, and then I'm going to give it a date. Okay, then I'm going to go File, Import, File, and I'm going to choose the file I just downloaded. Okay, and there's the deduplicated Endnote library. So you can see in my test library, I ended up with 987 records. So I'm now going to enter that. I'm going to record that because I'm going to need that for my PRISMA flow diagram. So you can now see that I had my total previously, and I removed a number of duplicates. In the box at the top right under duplicate records removed, I would record 1825, and under records screened, I would record the number after deduplication, 987. Okay, so we've done our deduplication in the Dedupatron, and now we want to get that back into Endnote so that we can split up our library so we can share the screening load. So the first thing to do is to go and open Endnote Desktop and then close your old library. And you'll see then that you get the option to open a new library, so open that up. And then re-import the deduplicated XML file that you got from Dedupatron. Then save that as deduplicated and then put the date behind it. Re-import the deduplicated file from Dedupatron. You'll have to do that by clicking File, Import File, and then choose Endnote Generated XML, and you'll have the option to import all. That's what you want with no translation, and then you'll save it. And you might want to name your library Deduplicated and then put the date behind it. The next thing you want to do, so it's easy for you to split it, is to put the record numbers down the side. So you do that by clicking Edit, Preferences, and then choosing Display Fields, and then change column 1 to record number. And then when you go back, the record numbers will be all over the place. So click the column header above the record numbers and it'll put it by order. Now, I would then split the file by the number of pairs of screeners you have. So if you've got 3 people, you don't need to split it at all. 2 people are going to do the screening and 1 person is going to manage the disputes. If you've got 6 people, then you just need to split it in 3 pairs of 2. If you've got 7 people, then you want to leave 1 person to do the dispute resolution and split it by 3 pairs of 2. So divide the total number of records by the number of pairs you have. When you go to split the file by pairs, highlight the number that's the total number divided by the number of pairs, and then right click and add references to and create a custom group, and rename that custom group by the pair number and the names of the people who are doing the reviewing. I'll show you how to do that now. Okay, so I'm back here in my Endnote library, and the first thing that I want to do is close the library. That's the one that contains the duplicates. So File, Close Library. Okay. Okay, So now I've got this screen here, which asks me, what do I want to do? Create a new library or open an existing library? And you want to create a new library. And I'm going to call it Deduplicate 261021. I'm going to append lesson on the end, just so I know I'm doing it during the lesson. Okay, and it's blank. Right, the next thing I want to do is I want to go Edit, Preferences, and change the first column from whatever it is to record number. Okay, and then hit Apply. Okay. Now I want to go File, Import File. And you can see my input option is Endnote generated XML file. I'm going to take all duplicates because there won't be any, because I'm going to get the deduplicated XML file and there's no translation. So I'm going to hit choose and go to where I saved the deduplicated XML file and then hit import. Okay. So now you can see down the side, it's all a mess. So I want to have record number ascending, and you can see there I've got the record numbers. Now, let's assume that I'm in a team of 7 reviewers, okay, and I want to split the workload equally. So we've already said that a sensible way to do this is have one person in an odd team go off and do all the disputation, the dispute resolution themselves, okay? So in this team, we're going to split by those 6 potential screeners. And the easiest way to do that is split them into 3 pairs of 2, because everything needs to be double extracted. So you're going to screen in pairs. So I've got 987 references. So I need to split that by 3. So that's 327. So let's go from record 1 and scroll down to record 327. I'm going to hit Shift and hit 327. Then I'm going to right click and move references to create custom group. Then I'm going to right click and rename that group to pair 1, name 1, name 2. And you're going to use real names here. Okay. Then I'm going to go back into my list of all references, scroll down to the bottom of the ones that I highlighted. So 327, then click 328 to 654. Then I hold Shift down, and there we go, we've got it. And then I'm going to right click, add references to create custom group. And then I'm going to rename that group pair 2, name 3, name 4. And you can see equal numbers there. Then I'm going to go back into all references. And go from there to the end. Again, add references to create custom group, rename group, pair 3, name 5, name 6. Okay, and that's how you split the groups for pairing. And you can see there, my maths was no good, and I should have split it by 329, but we're going to leave that in. Okay, now we're going to look at how we get those separate groups into the screening tool. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is create the XML file from your group. So click on your group that you want to export, and then over on the right hand side, when you're in the references from that group, click one of them and then press Ctrl A and highlight all of them, and then go up to export. And when you click the export button, you'll see down the bottom there's a little check button to say export selected references. So export that XML file, give it a name that includes the reference to the pair that are doing it and the date that you've exported it. Then go over to SR Accelerator, click on Screenatron. You'll see you have the option to upload an XML file. So click in the little browse bar there, and then navigate to where the XML file is. Upload that, name it up the top, save it, and you might want to just go into File and Save to make sure you can see that you can save it. Once you've saved it, you'll see down the left-hand side, there is a exclude and include groups. You might want to see where you can add another group and add a group called Review and give it a hotkey button 3. The next thing I would do is go up into Select Undecided. So click up in the top and you'll see the button, the group that's undecided. And then up in the menu bar, choose View, Show All Abstracts. Now, the hotkey for the different groups you're going to allocate those references to are 1 for exclude, 2 for include. If we've made a group called Review and given it a hotkey 3, you've got 3 to allocate it to Review. So press the button 1 to exclude it, press the button 2 to include it, and press button 3 to allocate it to a Review. You also find that space excludes and arrow key includes. Now, if you're worried that you might press those buttons by mistake, just go into the group. You'll see where that little pen is, and you can change the hotkey. So if you might want to get rid of the space bar or the arrow key if you don't think you'll include them. And then you should be in a situation now where you can see all your abstracts. All you do is, as one is highlighted, press 1 or 2 or 3, and it'll move straight on to the next one until they're all done. If you find yourself that you need to take a break, just go up to the top, up in the top left-hand corner, and hit save, and it'll download an STRN file, which saves your progress. And if you want to start again, say you've gone off and done something else and shut your computer down, just go into Screenatron and load the STRN file rather than loading the XML file again. Okay, let's go on to the next bit. Okay, so we're now going to export one of those screening pairs groups. So you can see I have highlighted in the groups pair 1, and then I've clicked one of the records in that group and then pressed Ctrl A to highlight them all. And now I'm going to export those. And you can see down the bottom, it's checked export selected references. So I'm going to call it pair 1 26 10 2 1. If I could spell. Okay, and I'm going to export it as an XML file. Okay, now that's exported. Okay, now I'm in Systematic Review Accelerator again, and I've gone over to Screenatron. And I'm going to choose a library. And I'm going to select the library I just downloaded from Endnote. And then hit Upload. And I'm going to give it a name. Pair 1 26 10 2 1, and I'm going to hit save. And then I've noticed if you go here and click save, you should get the option to back it up. And that backs up the Screenatron file so that you've got it there if you want to go back to where you started. Now let's assume here we've only got 327 to do, but we might want to take a break halfway through. And so if you want to take a break and be sure that if something goes wrong, you've got the file, just make sure you go in File and press Save. Okay, the next thing we want to do at the moment, we've got excluded files, excluded records, and we've got include records. But we might find that we've got some records that are reviews that we want to keep hold of. So they're not reviews we'll necessarily, so there are other systematic reviews where we might want to go through their reference list and retrieve those references, but we wouldn't include the reviews themselves. So I'm just going to add another group and give it a name. And the group's name is reviews. And the hotkey I'm going to press to select that type of group is 3. And I'm going to hit Save. Now you can see if I go in Exclude, the hotkeys for allocating a record to exclude is 1 or space. And for include, it's 2 or arrow left. So I'm pressing 1 to exclude a record, 2 to include it, or 3 to put it in a review group. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. So I'm in undecided, is go View, Show All Abstracts, and then I can see all of them, okay? Right, so I'm in the first one, and you remember my PICOs is bronchiectasis, and the intervention is exercise. I don't care about the comparator. The outcome is spirometry, and I'm only interested in RCTs. So this isn't an intervention study. This is a cohort study, so I'm going to exclude it. And you see that first one has already gone into the exclude pile. So the next one, this is a drug treatment trial, so I'm going to exclude that. And this one is looking at the effects of opioid analgesics and relaxation, so I'm excluding that one, and so on. So each time I'm just pressing 1, that's all I have to do. And I can go through and very quickly go through and allocate each of these records to its group. And because I'm going to take a break now, I'm just going to hit Save, and then I can come back to it later. So, okay, so let's assume I've got to the end of my screening, and my friend has got to the end of their screening as well. Well, let's see how we can get it back together. So, what I've done, the first thing I've done is I want to look at whether we agree on the ones we include, okay? So we can look at the issues around reviews separately, but let's just look at the one if we've agreed on the ones we've included, because that's the bit that matters, okay? Now what I want to do is go up to File and Export, okay? And what I want to do is download the included group in an XML file format, okay? And it's given it a sensible name already. So it started off with the name of the pair and that were included and the date and the time. Perfect. Let's hit Save. Okay. Let's assume you and the person you're paired with have both done your screening and you've got your XML file. How can you get your partner's XML file? Well, what they could do is upload it on their copy of Endnote desktop and then right click on it and share it with you. And then the next time you sync, you'll get their XML file in your group. You'll get a group added, named whatever they've named it, like screened pair 1 fake Ian, okay? And you right click on it and download it. So then you've got the XML file you already downloaded from Screenatron and the file that you got from your friend's Endnote online that you synced with your Endnote desktop. You then need to go back into SR Accelerator and click on the Disputatron tab, and you get the option to name the two reviewers. So name yourself and upload your XML file, and name your screening partner, so fake Ian, and upload his. Now here, once that's done and they've synced, you'll see you have the option to show just the ones where there's a disagreement, or all of them, or just the ones that are included. You want just the disagreement ones because that's all you need to resolve. And no hotkeys here. You just click on them to view the abstract, or in the view show all abstracts. And then you get to decide whether they're in or out by toggling the switch. Once you've done that and you've cleared up all your disagreements, then you can click the download to include all the XML files of the included papers that you're going to later use for full text screening. So download that and put it back into Endnote Desktop in a new group, just like we've done before. And that's all the title and abstract screening done for that pair. And when all the pairs have done it, you've then got all the files you need for full text screening. Okay, so I'm back in Endnote Desktop, and you see there's my imported references here. Right, let's go into the imported references and press A. I'm going to drag it into screened in include. Okay. And then I'm going to share this group. And what I could do there is add the email address of my screening partner, so when they sync, they'll have both files available. And that way you can download them onto the same computer. So use Endnote Online and the sync function so that you can have both XML files, the XML file from here and the XML file that you download from your own Screenatron activity. So let me download this again. File, export, and I'm going to export it as an XML file, pretending that this is how it would be if I was downloading somebody's shared one. So screened, included Ian. Okay, so now I've got my two XML files, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into SR Accelerator. I'm going to go back to SR Accelerator, and I'm going to go into Disputatron. Now, can you see here, I've got two names. So I'm going to have Ian and fake Ian. And I'm going to hit browse. And this is Ian's XML. And I'm going to browse here. And this is fake Ian XML. And I'm going to hit submit. Okay. So it's just the two include files, and what Disputatron does is look to see, are there any where there is a disagreement? And you can see here that we agreed on 99, but we were in conflict over 3. So we're just going to look at the ones we're in conflict in. Okay. Now you can see here, this one's nothing to do with my title, so I'm gonna say exclude, because fake Ian was right and real Ian was wrong. And this one is a load of nonsense as well, So we're going to leave that as an exclude, and this one is a load of nonsense as well. So in this case, I'm not going to change any of the decisions. If I did, you'll see the included articles go up. So now I'll download my 99, and it's now called Untitled Disputes Resolved 21, and I'll hit save. If I titled it up here by the pair, I'd know which pair it is. And then I can go back into my library. I can create a new group. Pair 1 resolved. I can then file, import, file, choose, and get my resolved one and import it. Okay, and now we're just at those 99, and I can highlight all of them by pressing Control A and drag it into my resolved group. Okay. And now that's all the title and abstract screening done, and the next stage will be full text screening, which we'll look at next week. Okay, so now we've done our deduplication, we've done our individual screening, we've got both of our screen files from our pairs, and we've put them in and dealt with our disputes, and finally we've got our record from our pair. And you can imagine if the other pairs then shared their completed files where the disputes had been resolved, you could bring them all together in one Endnote library, and you could see the total of number of records screened. So by the end of this week, you should be able to complete the number of records that you had at the beginning before you deduplicated, the number of duplicate records removed, the total number of records screened after the duplicates were removed, the total of number of records you excluded, and finally, on halfway down that screening block, the total of number of reports that you're going to need to retrieve. Okay, so that's all the information you should be able to complete on your PRISMA 2020 flow diagram this week. So by next week, what you need to do is take all those records that you've already downloaded, and you need to put them all into an Endnote library and get them in Dedupatron and deduplicate them. You need to confirm your eligibility criteria with your supervisor and your TA and get that down as per the PRISMA guidelines. And once you've got your eligibility criteria sorted, then you can start doing your abstract screening. So you can split those deduplicated records into your pairs, use Screenatron to undertake screening. You can then use the Disputatron to record your agreement before you do dispute resolution, and then you can get the total number that you've taken forward to full text screening at the end. So that allows you to complete lines 1 and 2 of the flow diagram, one block of the third line of the flow diagram. Okay, so that's quite a lot for you to get done this week, but that means if you can get all that done, then next week we're going to look at full text screening. Work together, work efficiently, use these tools, and we'll be well on our way to doing full text screening next week. Okay, thank you. See you next week.